Jake had always believed he knew his wife, Emily, completely. 8 years of marriage, countless shared memories, a cozy home in suburban Texas. He thought their life was predictable, safe, and happy. But lately, he had begun to notice subtle changes. Small inconsistencies, tiny gaps in explanations, and above all, her late-night trips. Emily loved to drive alone at night. She said it helped her think, clear her mind, listen to music. Jake had tried to accept it, imagining her cruising along empty streets with the moonlight reflecting off the asphalt. Yet, a knot of unease had begun to grow in his chest. It started innocuously. One night, she returned from one of these drives slightly later than usual, smelling faintly of a perfume he didn't recognize. "Just wanted to drive and unwind," she had said, brushing past him with a distracted smile. But the unease didn't leave him. He noticed subtle things: a new lipstick shade on the counter, a phone that suddenly had a lock he had never seen before, receipts from gas stations and towns she claimed she had never visited. Jake tried to push the thoughts away. He didn't want to believe the worst. He trusted Emily, or at least he had trusted her until now. But the pieces didn't fit together anymore. The night drives, the distant stares, the sudden need for secrecy, it all felt wrong. The turning point came one evening when Jake noticed a crumpled gas receipt in the car. The location was miles from any route she usually took. A chill ran down his spine. His heart raced as realization dawned. Perhaps Emily wasn't just driving to clear her mind. Determined to uncover the truth, Jake made a decision that terrified him. While Emily was at work, he quietly climbed into her car, his hands trembling as he opened the glove compartment. What he found made his stomach drop. A used condom lay hidden beneath some paperwork. Every fear he had tried to suppress came rushing back at once. His wife, the woman he had loved and trusted, had crossed a line he had never imagined. Now there was no turning back. Jake knew he had to follow her, observe her, and understand the full scope of what was happening. That night, as the streetlights cast long shadows over their quiet neighborhood, Jake prepared himself. He would discover the truth, no matter how painful. And somewhere deep inside, he felt a mix of fear, anger, and heartbreak. The life he thought he knew, the safe, predictable marriage, was slipping through his fingers, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Jake couldn't sleep that night. Every sound in the house seemed amplified. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of the wall clock, even the distant barking of a dog down the street. His mind replayed the moment he found the used condom in Emily's car. The reality of her betrayal made his chest tighten. He paced the living room, trying to calm himself, but the questions kept gnawing at him. How long had this been going on? Was it just a fling, or something more serious? And most importantly, where did she go during those late-night drives? He knew one thing: he needed proof. He couldn't confront her blindly, and he couldn't let his emotions cloud his judgment. This had to be meticulous. Every move, every observation, every detail needed to be precise. Jake began by tracking Emily's routine. He noted her work schedule, her usual stops, and her nighttime departures. He recalled the gas station receipt and began marking locations on a map. Patterns were forming, small hints of a hidden life that she had carefully concealed. Next, he prepared his own tools. His old digital camera, capable of taking discreet photos, was charged and ready. He had binoculars stashed in his car and a small notebook to record times, locations, and observations. He had to remain invisible, a silent shadow in the night. But the most challenging part was the anticipation. He knew Emily often drove alone at night, the windows slightly open, the music playing softly. She looked so serene behind the wheel, as if the darkness belonged to her alone. Yet Jake felt an icy weight in his stomach, imagining the possibilities that awaited him at the end of her journey. He decided he couldn't wait until she was gone again. That night, he parked his car a few streets away from their house, hidden in the shadows, and watched. Hours passed. Emily's car remained in the garage, quiet. Jake's hope flickered and died with every minute of stillness. At 11:45 p.m., he finally saw the headlights. Emily pulled out of the driveway, humming softly to the music. Jake's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. His heart pounded as he started the engine and followed her at a safe distance. The city streets blurred past in the dark. Emily drove with a calm, almost carefree confidence, taking roads he had never seen her take before. She didn't seem lost or hesitant. She knew exactly where she was going. And that terrified him even more. Jake stayed back, careful not to be seen. He knew this was the night he would either uncover the truth or shatter his remaining illusions. Every turn of Emily's car brought him closer to the answers he dreaded. The night air felt thick, heavy with tension, and the moonlight glinted off the asphalt, casting long, foreboding shadows. Somewhere deep inside, Jake understood tonight would change everything. There was no turning back, and no matter what he saw, his life would never be the same. Jake followed Emily at a safe distance, keeping his headlights dim and his speed moderate. Every turn she took seemed deliberate, almost rehearsed, as if she had traveled this route countless times before. The city streets gave way to winding coastal roads, the faint scent of salt carried by the night breeze. Emily hummed along to the radio, oblivious to the shadow that trailed her. She parked near a secluded stretch of beach, where the moonlight reflected off the calm waves. Jake's heart raced as he watched her exit the car. The quiet rhythm of the ocean was broken only by the soft crunch of sand beneath her heels. She waited for someone, or so it seemed, and then a man emerged from the shadows, walking confidently toward her. He was tall, well-built, and immediately recognizable to Jake as someone she had never mentioned. His presence sent a wave of anger and disbelief through Jake. Emily smiled, a warm, intimate smile that made Jake's stomach twist. The man reached for her, and she leaned into him, their bodies close, their movements fluid and natural. Jake felt a cold fire burn in his chest. He had imagined confrontations like this, but seeing it unfold in real life was far more painful than he had anticipated. The couple moved to Emily's car. The ocean waves crashed in the background as they embraced inside the vehicle. Jake could see the dim light from the dashboard illuminating their faces. The scene was unmistakable. Her lips met his, and the touch was anything but innocent. Jake's hands clenched the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He wanted to scream, to confront them, but he knew that would ruin his only chance to gather undeniable proof. He had to remain the silent observer, the shadow in the night. Minutes passed, each one stretching into eternity. Emily and the man's laughter, the whispered words, the subtle touches, they all confirmed his worst fears. The woman he had loved, trusted, and built a life with had betrayed him in the most intimate way, right there in the car, on a quiet beach under the stars. Jake's mind raced. He had found the used condom earlier, and now he had witnessed the act itself. The evidence was irrefutable. Yet even in the searing pain, he felt a strange clarity. The path forward was now clear. He would gather everything, document it meticulously, and confront the reality without hesitation. The couple finally separated. Emily stepped out, smoothing her hair and adjusting her clothes, as if nothing had happened. The man got into his car and drove away, leaving Emily alone on the sand. She didn't notice Jake, hidden in the shadows, watching every move. Jake exhaled slowly, forcing himself to calm down. He had what he needed. Proof. The night air, the sound of waves, and the glow of moonlight felt almost surreal against the storm raging in his chest. As Emily started her car and drove back toward the city, Jake stayed behind for a moment longer, committing every detail to memory. This night would haunt him forever, but it would also mark the beginning of a new chapter, one where he could no longer ignore the truth, no matter how painful. Jake returned home after the harrowing night at the beach, his mind a whirlwind of anger, sorrow, and determination. He couldn't simply confront Emily without solid proof. He needed more than just what he had witnessed. He needed a meticulous plan to ensure that nothing could be dismissed or denied. He locked the doors, turned off the lights, and sat in the quiet living room, letting the events replay in his mind. Emily's late-night drives, her secretive phone calls, the way she had kissed another man in the car, it all painted a clear picture of betrayal. But Jake knew he had to document everything. Evidence was his only ally now. He pulled out his notebook and began writing down all the details he could remember. Locations, times, descriptions of the men she had been with, the car she drove, even the clothes she wore. Every small detail could be crucial. Next, he checked the camera footage from their home security system. Although it didn't cover the beach or the other locations, it confirmed her nightly departures. Her car would leave the driveway at odd hours, always returning early in the morning. Jake noticed a pattern. Emily seemed to crave the solitude of the night, driving aimlessly when she thought no one was watching. Jake knew he couldn't follow her every night on his own. It would be exhausting and risky. He needed help, someone professional. He began researching private investigators, making calls to agencies with nationwide coverage. After several inquiries, he found one that could assign an operative near the coastal area she frequented. He scheduled a meeting, emphasizing discretion and the need for photographic evidence. While arranging the surveillance, Jake devised a personal plan. He couldn't resist checking Emily's car one more time. Late at night, he quietly retrieved the keys she had left in a drawer and went to the garage. Opening the car, he found the hidden compartment where she kept personal items. Inside, to his horror, was a used condom. His stomach churned, but his resolve strengthened. This discovery confirmed what he had suspected for weeks. Emily was living a secret life, one that included late-night rendezvous and careless intimacy. He carefully returned the item to its place, making sure she would notice nothing. The evidence would be crucial. The next step was surveillance. Jake instructed the private investigator to focus on Emily's late-night drives and any suspicious meetings. He provided photographs, descriptions, and a schedule of her usual departures. Every detail mattered. The operative assured Jake that they would document everything and deliver a report with timestamps, locations, and photographic evidence. Jake spent the following days in a state of tense anticipation. He pretended to be calm at home, interacting with Emily as though nothing was wrong. He helped with chores, prepared meals, and engaged the children in their usual routines. But beneath the surface, every nerve in his body was alert. He knew the night ahead would reveal the full extent of Emily's betrayal. By the time evening arrived, Jake was ready. The private investigator's car was parked discreetly near their house, equipped with cameras and tracking devices. He had laid out a backup plan in case Emily noticed surveillance or changed her routine. Every precaution was taken. As he watched the clock tick closer to her expected departure, Jake felt a mixture of dread and anticipation. The calm night air outside contrasted sharply with the storm inside his heart. He knew that by morning, nothing in his life would remain the same. Jake exhaled slowly, steeling himself. Tonight, he would see the truth unfold once again, and this time, he would ensure that nothing could be denied. The night was heavy with anticipation as Jake watched Emily leave the house. Her headlights disappeared down the street, following the same route she had taken countless times before. He kept the surveillance team updated via discreet messages. Every turn and stop logged meticulously. Emily's car slowed near the coastal stretch he had memorized. The moonlight shimmered on the water, casting silver trails across the dark sand. Jake's heart pounded as he watched her park and step out. She looked around, her movements careful, yet there was a subtle excitement in her step. Moments later, a man appeared from the shadows, walking toward her with purpose. Jake's stomach twisted. This was the same pattern he had feared. Emily greeted him with a smile that twisted something deep inside Jake, a mix of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. The two of them moved toward her car. Jake's hand clenched the dashboard in his car as he watched through binoculars. Emily opened the passenger door, and the man slid inside. What followed left no room for doubt. Through the faint glow of the dashboard, Jake saw Emily and the man embrace. Her hands wandered, and their lips met with a passion that cut through Jake's chest like a blade. The sound of the waves outside was drowned out by the pounding in his heart. Minutes passed, each one stretching like an eternity. Jake took out his phone, snapping discreet photos, documenting everything. Every touch, every movement, every whispered word was proof. The used condom he had found in her car earlier suddenly made grim sense. She had been prepared, careful, but careless with the one person who truly loved her. As the night deepened, Emily leaned back in the seat, laughing softly at something the man said. The sight of her happiness, shared with someone else, felt like a betrayal etched in stone. Jake's hands shook, but he forced himself to stay calm. This evidence would be undeniable. After what felt like hours, but was only a few intense minutes, the man got out. Emily straightened her clothes, smoothing her hair and adjusting her seatbelt, as though nothing had occurred. He drove away, leaving her alone on the quiet beach road. Jake's pulse was wild, but he noted every detail. Emily started her car and drove back toward the city. Jake trailed at a distance, careful not to be noticed. Every movement, every stop, every signal from the surveillance team confirmed what he had feared. This was not an isolated incident. It was a repeated pattern of betrayal. As he returned home later, Jake felt a mixture of grief and clarity. The truth was no longer hidden behind whispers or doubts. He had seen it with his own eyes. Emily's nocturnal drives, her secret meetings, her intimate acts, they were all now undeniable evidence. Jake knew what he had to do next. The path forward was clear. Gather the proof, confront the reality, and ensure that the life he shared with Emily would never be built on lies again. The morning sun filtered through the blinds as Jake sat at his kitchen table, the photographs and notes spread out before him. Each image of Emily with the man, every timestamp, every detail of her betrayal, felt like both a wound and a weapon. He knew he had to act carefully. Emotion could not compromise strategy. Jake called his attorney, a firm specializing in family law and custody disputes. The voice on the other end was calm and professional as he explained the situation. Jake outlined the evidence, describing Emily's secretive behavior, her nocturnal drives, and the photographic proof of her infidelity on the beach. "Everything we need," the attorney said after listening intently. "We'll start preparing the divorce papers and ensure your custody rights are fully protected. Given your role as the primary caregiver and the evidence we have, you'll be in a strong position." Jake felt a measure of relief. Legal support was critical, but he also knew he needed to maintain composure at home. Emily continued her daily routines, unaware that Jake now held irrefutable proof of her betrayal. She still smiled at the children, still made her morning coffee, still spoke casually about mundane matters. Meanwhile, Jake began organizing the evidence meticulously. The photographs were cataloged with timestamps and locations. Notes detailing her nightly patterns, her secret drives, and the context of each rendezvous were prepared for the lawyer. Even the used condom he had found in her car was carefully documented as part of the chain of proof. He arranged a meeting with a private investigator to compile a formal report, ensuring everything was documented professionally. The report would detail Emily's infidelity with specific dates, locations, and photographic evidence, making it impossible for her to dispute. The next step involved planning the timing of the divorce filing. Jake wanted the process to be as clean and controlled as possible, minimizing disruption to the children. He coordinated with his attorney to serve Emily with the papers at a neutral location, ensuring proper legal procedure while also maintaining a sense of finality. Despite the turmoil inside him, Jake maintained his outward composure. He played the role of the attentive husband and father flawlessly, never giving Emily the slightest hint that he knew the truth. At night, he would sit alone, reviewing the evidence, imagining the confrontation that was to come. Jake also considered the children. He knew the importance of their stability and wanted to ensure they were shielded from the full weight of Emily's betrayal until the legal process could protect them. Every decision he made now was calculated not just for justice, but for their well-being. By the end of the week, Jake had finalized the timeline. Surveillance reports, photographic evidence, and the formal report from the private investigator were ready. The divorce documents were prepared and notarized, awaiting service. He felt a mixture of anticipation and sorrow. This was the culmination of weeks of careful observation, sleepless nights, and emotional turmoil. Jake took a deep breath. He knew that the next phase, legal confrontation, would be challenging. But armed with truth, evidence, and unwavering resolve, he was ready to reclaim his life, protect his children, and face the consequences of Emily's betrayal head-on. The morning air was crisp as Jake drove to the law firm. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, the stack of divorce papers resting on the passenger seat beside him. Each document carried the weight of weeks of betrayal, sleepless nights, and careful planning. Today, it would become official. At the firm, the attorney gave him a final briefing. "Remember, Jake," she said, "serve the papers calmly and professionally. Avoid any confrontation. The evidence will speak for itself in court." Jake nodded, a knot of anxiety and determination tightening in his chest. Emily's workplace was just a few blocks away. As he parked at a discreet distance, Jake felt a mixture of apprehension and grim satisfaction. He watched her from afar as she moved through the office, unaware that her secret life had been exposed. The process server approached, documents in hand, and within minutes Emily was handed the papers. She froze for a moment, the color draining from her face as her eyes met Jake's from across the room. The silence was deafening. For the first time, reality broke through her carefully maintained facade. I, I don't understand, she whispered, her voice trembling. Jake stayed calm, speaking softly but firmly. Everything is clear, Emily. The papers explain everything. We'll discuss the rest in court. Her lips parted as if to say something more, but she didn't. She looked down at the documents, then back at him, her expression a mixture of shock, shame, and disbelief. Jake turned away, walking back to his car, the finality of the moment settling in his chest like a cold weight. As he drove away, a mix of emotions coursed through him: relief, sorrow, and the bitter taste of vindication. The first step was complete. The legal process had begun, and the evidence of her infidelity would now guide the proceedings. That evening, back at home, Jake reflected on the day. The children played unaware in the living room, their laughter a stark contrast to the turmoil that had dominated his heart. He made dinner, tucked them in, and sat alone with his thoughts. The storm of betrayal had not ended, but it was finally contained within a framework of law and truth. Jake knew there would be challenges ahead: court dates, custody discussions, and emotional confrontations. But for the first time, he felt a sense of control. The evidence, carefully gathered and documented, was his shield and his sword. He poured himself a drink and raised it quietly in a private toast to the future, one where honesty, clarity, and the well-being of his children guided every decision. The path was painful, but it was just beginning, and he would walk it with unwavering resolve. The morning of the first hearing arrived with a heavy gray sky. Jake dressed carefully, each movement deliberate, as if preparing armor for battle. The courthouse loomed large in front of him, a symbol of the confrontation that would determine the future of his family. Inside, the air was tense with anticipation. Lawyers shuffled papers, clients whispered nervously, and the distant echo of gavel strikes reminded everyone of the authority of the law. Jake's attorney guided him to the assigned courtroom, whispering reassurances. Stay calm. Speak only when necessary. The evidence speaks for itself. Emily entered the room shortly after, her eyes scanning for him. When they met, the silence was immediate and electric. She was composed, yet the subtle tremor in her hands betrayed the inner turmoil he had come to expect. The judge called the session to order, and the proceedings began. Jake's attorney presented the carefully compiled evidence: the photographs, the private investigator's report, the documented timeline of her infidelity. Every piece was cataloged and verified, leaving no room for ambiguity. Emily's lawyer attempted to challenge the evidence, questioning the legitimacy of the surveillance and the methods used to gather information. Jake felt a flicker of tension but remained calm. The private investigator's testimony clarified the validity of the report, leaving the courtroom in no doubt. As the session progressed, Jake found himself confronting a whirlwind of emotions. Anger flared at the betrayal, sorrow for the collapse of a once happy marriage, and guilt for the way the children would be affected. He glanced at them in the gallery, their small hands holding one another, trusting him completely to protect their world. Emily spoke briefly, her voice trembling as she tried to explain her actions. She claimed confusion, loneliness, and the irresistible pull of excitement. But her words felt hollow against the weight of truth laid bare by photographs and documents. Jake felt no relief, only the deep ache of loss. The judge reviewed the documentation, asked questions, and noted the pattern of behavior. Custody of the children, property division, and visitation rights were discussed. Jake's attorney emphasized his role as the primary caregiver, the stability he could provide, and the children's best interests. By the end of the session, it was clear that the legal system would favor Jake's custody claim. Emily's visitation would be supervised initially, and the division of assets was straightforward due to clear documentation. The evidence of her infidelity had solidified his position, ensuring the protection of the children and the home they had shared. After leaving the courthouse, Jake felt a mix of exhaustion and cautious relief. The first battle was over, but the war of emotional healing had only just begun. Driving home, he reflected on the events, realizing that the future would require strength, patience, and resilience, not only for him, but for the children who relied on him completely. That night, He sat in the quiet of his living room, the children asleep, and allowed himself a single, deep breath. The path ahead was painful and uncertain, but it was finally defined by truth, evidence, and the promise of protection for those he loved most. The house was quieter now, a subtle but constant reminder of the changes that had swept through Jake's life. Emily's absence left an empty space in the rooms they had once shared, the laughter that had echoed through the halls now replaced by silence and memories. Jake focused on the children, guiding them through the emotional turbulence. Jeremy and Lily sensed the shift but trusted Jake's calm presence. He listened to their questions and reassured them, careful not to burden them with the full weight of adult conflict. "Mommy loves you, but sometimes adults make mistakes," he said gently, masking his own pain. Meanwhile, Emily's life outside the house began to unravel in its own way. Rumors circulated about her behavior, the consequences of her choices slowly becoming apparent. Friends and colleagues whispered about her impulsive lifestyle, the nights she spent driving alone along the coast, the risky encounters that had once seemed like freedom but now exposed her vulnerabilities. Jake, for the first time in months, allowed himself moments of quiet reflection. He thought about the betrayal, the lost trust, and the deep wounds left by Emily's actions. Yet amidst the sorrow, he felt a flicker of possibility, a chance to rebuild, not just for the children, but for himself. It started subtly. He reconnected with old friends, enjoyed quiet evenings without tension, and explored hobbies he had abandoned during the chaos of suspicion and investigation. One evening, he met someone new, Hannah, a woman whose own experiences with betrayal had shaped her into a resilient and compassionate person. Their connection was immediate, grounded in mutual understanding and shared values. Jake noticed how easily the children warmed to Hannah, how her presence brought lightness into their lives. With her, laughter returned, small but steady, a soothing balm over months of emotional turmoil. Conversations became easier, and Jake allowed himself to imagine a future that didn't revolve around past wounds. Yet, reflection brought clarity as well. He recognized the lingering scars, the caution he now exercised in trust, and the need for boundaries. Emily's actions had taught him about the fragility of relationships and the importance of honesty, transparency, and respect. He vowed not to repeat past mistakes, to nurture the trust that remained between him and his children, and to embrace a life guided by integrity. The journey was not without pain. There were nights of lingering sadness, moments when memories of betrayal threatened to overwhelm him. But each day brought small victories, the children smiling, a quiet evening shared with someone he could trust, the satisfaction of standing firm and protecting those he loved. By the end of the chapter, Jake realized that life, though irrevocably changed, offered a path forward. Pain and betrayal had marked the past, but resilience, love, and new beginnings defined the horizon. With the children safely in his care and the possibility of love returning, he felt a cautious optimism. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to hope, not for perfection, but for honesty, connection, and the quiet happiness that comes from rebuilding a life on one's own terms. The morning sun spilled through the living room windows, casting a warm glow across the house that now felt like home again. Jake stood by the kitchen counter, sipping his coffee and listening to Jeremy and Lily chatter about their school day. The house was alive with a sense of calm and routine, hard-won, yet deeply comforting. Hannah entered the room quietly, a soft smile on her face. Jake felt a surge of gratitude and warmth, a stark contrast to the chaos and betrayal that had once dominated his life. She knelt beside the children, ruffling Jeremy's hair and whispering encouragements to Lily. Watching her, Jake felt a deep sense of relief. This was what stability looked like, what trust and affection could build. It wasn't a life without scars. The memories of Emily's infidelity and the betrayal of their shared years still lingered in the corners of his mind. But those memories no longer dictated his every action. Instead, they served as reminders of his resilience, the lessons learned, and the boundaries he would never again allow to be crossed. Later that evening, Jake took a walk along the beach with the children, the cool sand beneath their feet and the rhythmic crash of waves filling the quiet spaces. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to feel free from fear, from anger, from the relentless shadow of doubt. The children laughed, collecting shells and chasing the retreating surf, and Jake joined in, letting the joy of the moment wash over him. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Hannah joined them. Jake took her hand, feeling the warmth and certainty of her presence. "We've come a long way," he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. Jeremy looked up at him, wide-eyed. "Dad, are we really okay now?" Jake knelt down, pulling his son close. "Yes, buddy. We're more than okay. We're strong. And we'll keep moving forward, together." Lily nestled against him, and he held them both, the past slowly fading into the background. He had fought to protect them, to rebuild their lives, and now he could finally breathe. That night, after the children were asleep, Jake and Hannah sat together on the porch, the stars above mirrored by the distant lights of the town. He spoke quietly, recounting the trials they had faced, the pain endured, and the hope that had carried him through. Hannah rested her head on his shoulder. "You've done everything right," she whispered. "Not just for you, but for them. For all of you." Jake closed his eyes for a moment, letting the night absorb the tension of years past. He knew the road ahead would have challenges, but for the first time, he faced it with courage, trust, and love. The house no longer felt empty, the children no longer alone, and his heart no longer burdened by betrayal. The waves continued their eternal rhythm, a reminder that life moved forward, relentless and beautiful. And in that moment, Jake realized that despite the pain, despite the heartbreak, he had arrived at a new beginning, one built on truth, resilience, and the unshakable bond of family. For Jake, the past had ended, and the future, bright, uncertain, but full of promise, awaited.